Mr. Goldman, I want to pick up on the president using the powers of his office, in this case, in a meeting at the White House, to pressure a foreign country to investigate his political rival. Now that you've had time to step back from the investigation, is there any doubt that the president did, in fact, use a White House visit to pressure President Zelensky to announce investigations of his political rival to benefit his re-election campaign?
I will answer that question in a minute, but I would like just to comment to Mr. Buck that the majority staff and no one had any contact with Ambassador Sondland after his deposition. But the answer to your question is yes, Ms. Bass.
My colleague, Mr. Deutsch, mostly focused on the period prior to the July 25th call. I'd like to focus on the period after. Following the call, did President Zelensky come to the White House for a meeting?
No, he's never come to the White House, and multiple witnesses said that there's a huge distinction between a White House meeting and a meeting on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly where they did meet on September 25th.
So has a White House meeting been scheduled?
No.
So did the president and his associates essentially continue to withhold the White House meeting? And if so, why did they do that?
Well, the evidence found that the White House meeting was conditioned on the announcement of these investigations. And so once in mid-August, when the Ukrainians, Mr. Yermak and President Zelensky, decided that they were not going to issue that statement that Rudy Giuliani wanted to include Burisma in the 2016 elections, there was no White House meeting. It soon became clear to them that the security assistance was also at risk, and that took on a renewed importance for them.
Well, following the 25th call, the July 25th call, Ambassadors Sondland and Volker worked closely with Mr. Giuliani and the Ukrainians to help draft a statement that the president could make, President Zelensky. Wasn't that right?
Yes, and the report say they worked closely, and then there were also phone calls with the White House around the same time that they were working closely.
Do you know what that statement was supposed to say, according to Mr. Giuliani and the U.S. officials?
Well, the key difference is that it had to include that Ukraine would do the investigations of Burisma, which equaled the Biden investigation, and the 2016 Ukraine interference.
But was there concern about doing the investigations, or what? Were they just supposed to make a statement about it? What?
Ambassador Sondland very clearly testified that all he ever heard Mr. Giuliani or anyone say is that they only needed the public announcement of the investigations.
And so did the committee find that without that public statement that there would be no White House meeting?
Yes.
So I was struck by how clear the evidence seems to be on this point, and I'd like to play another example.
Was there a quid pro quo? As I testified previously, with regard to the requested White House call and the White House meeting, the answer is yes. Everyone was in the loop.
Mr. Goldman, did the investigative committees find that Mr. Giuliani played a role in the White House visit being conditioned on investigations?
The evidence showed that Mr. Giuliani not only played a role, but that he was essentially the president's agent. He was acting on behalf of the president, expressing the president's wishes, desires.
So what evidence did the committee find that corroborated the quote, everyone was in the loop?
Well, Ambassador Sondland produced for his public testimony, and I think it's very important in light of the testimony from Mr. Castor a minute ago with Mr. Buck as to how many times that Mr. Sondland did not remember in his deposition, because we agree it was egregious. But the advantage of doing closed depositions is that Mr. Sondland could not match up his testimony. So as other witnesses came in, then he realized that he had to actually admit to more and more stuff. So he did admit
She changes her story now.
to an email that included Secretary Pompeo.
She changes the subject.
I do want to make a point before my time goes out. We have to think about what is going on today. So President Zelensky is meeting with Putin today. And because of President Trump's actions, Zelensky is in a weakened position to negotiate with the leader of the nation that invaded his country. If our military assistance had been provided as Congress ordered it and the White House meeting, President Zelensky would be meeting with Putin from a position of strength. if you want the support, well, we have to realize that the message that this sends to our allies is to end to our standing in the world. If you want the support of the United States, be prepared to help with President Trump's reelection. President Trump's abuse of power has injured our nation.
Thank the chairman. The 299-page Democratic majority report mentions the Intelligence Community Inspector General